it's like, even when we win, he wins. So, yes, I am once again your TDOW champion, or still. I think I was the champion when we did the Payback recording. But because of the new setup, because I won, I have to do the punishment. But, it just makes sense. Payback, blah, 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 blah. But, so what he eventually decided on is that I have to watch the worst SummerSlam according to Cultaholic, I think it was. Cultaholic or What Culture? And I'm sorry, guys, I don't mean to keep getting you mixed up because you don't deserve that. But anywho, so yeah, I haven't watched it yet. I'm all set up. And yeah, I guess that's it for now. We'll see what happens. So, I'm not a wrestler. I don't write or talk about wrestling for a living. So no disrespect to whoever made that SummerSlam list. I don't know what was so bad about this one. There are parts that I will get to, but for the most part it was fine. I mean, there's even some parts I thought was really, really good. I wrote down the card as it happened. I don't know how much I'm going to talk about each match, because here comes the first problem, is that the first 3 matches I don't understand the point of. There's nothing wrong with the matches themselves, but there was no hype packages, so I have no idea if this is like the conclusion of a storyline or anything. The first match was 1-2-3 Kid versus Hakushi. Now, this is where I'm going to show my wrestling age, as it were, because I've only been a fan for like 5 years at the most. I was starting to get into it when Bayley lost her Raw Women's title to Alexa Bliss at that one pay-per-view that happened at Bayley's hometown, because of course it did. So however many years that's been. 4 or 5, I don't know. But the 1-2-3 Kid, so I'd heard the nickname 1-2-3 Kid, but I thought that was his nickname. I thought he had like an actual wrestler name. But no, apparently he's just the 1-2-3 Kid. And versus Hakushi. Now this is like the one thing where I think maybe this is why it's considered a bad pay-per-view, because Hakushi seemed really uncomfortably stereotypical, especially when they started calling him the modern-day kamikaze. On one hand, that nickname made sense, because apparently his whole thing is that he takes unnecessary risks to win and ends up hurting himself in the process. Which, okay, I'll grant you makes sense, but that said, the match itself was fine, I guess. Watching Hakushi was the highlight of it. I mean, 1-2-3 Kid was fine, but Hakushi did some really, really cool stuff. Or maybe not really, really cool, but, he was entertaining to watch. So, that match was 50% good, 50% meh. This one was, again, showing my wrestling age, this one was interesting to me because it was the first time I'd seen Aristocrat Triple H, or rather Hunter Hearst Helmsley. I only just heard about this gimmick during his 25th anniversary celebration a few months ago on whichever one of the shows it was. So I didn't even know that was a thing until recently. And he was fighting Bob Holly, who apparently is one of those wrestlers who has another job as a race car driver, which is a thing we're going to revisit here soon. And yeah, that match was fine. Nothing stood out of it, really, one way or another. Yeah, I can't even remember. I'm sure there was something that maybe was worth commenting, but, it's like, no, this was a fine by-the-numbers match. Speaking of, next we had Jacob and Eli Blue versus the Smoking Guns. This is a tag team match, but it's not a title match. See, again, this is what I'm talking about. I'm used to pay-per-views either being all about storylines or championship bouts. So to just have this random tag team match, just like, okay. And again, it was fine. It was like literally by the numbers. There was nothing good or bad to say about it. I'd never heard of the Blue Brothers, who were apparently identical twins, so this has been a thing for a while. or the Smoking Guns before, and I don't know if I'll ever hear of them again after this, unless they're in another pay-per-view I have to watch for a punishment. So, yeah, the first 3 matches are fine. They're there. And then this is one where I come in up, but this is the first match where I outright disagree. Skip, forgot if he had a last name, but his partner, he had a valet manager named Sonny, the Body Donnas. Skip, his whole gimmick is he's a fitness instructor, and he was fighting Barry Horowitz, who's apparently his gimmick was a loser. Like, they did call him a loser a couple times, but when they showed the card and he was doing his dramatic wrestling pose, he had glasses and a button-down shirt, and I think a pocket protector. But this match I thought was, like, really good, actually. Like, especially when it started, like, they're both very big dudes, especially Skip. Like, he didn't have biceps, he had growths on his freaking arms. And they're both moving so fast, like, cruiserweights are like, I blinked, what happened? Like, the only bad thing I think really to say, well, 1 or 2 bad things I could think to say about this match is I wish they had kept this pace the whole time, but I don't think that would be physically possible. It was just insane how fast they were moving. And this is the first match that had an actual hype package, and apparently the story here was Barry Horowitz was on a losing streak, because he's a loser. But then he beat Skip, like the one time, and then the second time when Skip was doing, they said this, during one of his push-up breaks. So the whole thing is like, no, this out-of-shape loser can't beat me. I'm perfect. This is bull crap. We're gonna settle it in the ring. And it was a really good, fun match. I really, really enjoyed it. The valet manager, Sonny, this isn't really necessary, but I can't help but not say it. They describe her as quote unquote perfect and a few other adjectives, and it's just like, they aren't wrong. She has a really amazing girl next door look, and considering she was a heel, she would be the girl next door who would laugh at you when you laugh at you when you asked her out. Which kind of leads me to my second problem with this match. It's not really a problem, it's just I would have done it differently. So Sonny and Skip are the heels, and Sonny helps Skip cheat a few times. So, and then toward the end of the match, Hakushi shows up, because apparently he has problems with Skip and Sonny too. And he creates a diversion, which, again, is a really impressive diversion, because he leaps. Okay, here's Skip, and here's Barry Horowitz. He's lying down, because he's just gonna... And then Hakushi leaps over both of them. Like, almost one from one side of the ring. He climbs up on the ropes and one side of the ring to the other, almost. It's really cool, really impressive. But supposedly that 30 seconds was enough of a distraction for Barry to roll up Skip and win. And I just feel like it would have been more impactful if the face won clean. But it was still an impressive bit, and it was still a really fun match. I really liked it. Next is our only women's match on the card. Bertha Faye, who again I've never heard of, versus the women's champion Alundra Blaze. And this is where I think this is part of why this is considered a bad pay-per-view, because this could not have aged well, because half the commentary was just talking about how fat and ugly Bertha Faye was. And don't get me wrong, she was overweight, but she was overweight in the same way that Nia Jax is. She did pretty well in the ring, I thought. But it sort of took me by surprise, because Bertha Faye won. She got the obviously pink women's title off Alundra Blaze. But again, the match itself was fine. There might have been a few moments, but I was distracted just by how much Vince and King were talking about how fat and ugly she was. It was just wow. that does bring me to one of the things I want to mention up. This is when Vince was doing commentary, and it is so weird to hear Vince with a normal voice. Not his exaggerated growling or whatever demon voice he has now, but just a normal, good, like a really good sports announcer voice. Like I would expect to hear this voice talking about football games or something. So that was weird. And he and Lawler had some really good commentary back and forth. Like, part of the rules for the punishment is that we are not allowed to, when we're watching something, we're not allowed to have our phone out. We're not allowed to play on our laptop, or in my case, during one or two of these, I might have been tempted to grab my Switch. But, so there's a lot of stuff I wanted to say, but I thought maybe taking notes would possibly be part of a distraction, so I didn't, so I'm just hoping I remember to bring up stuff. But yeah, so I just feel like between the first match and this match, this is why it's considered such a bad pay-per-view, is these did not age well. Next is Kama versus The Undertaker in a casket match, and this is where I just want to stress again, I am not a wrestling expert by any means, and for further context, I'm going to explain that I think a steel cage match, if you escape, if you deliberately leave the steel cage, that should be a loss. That is you running away, okay? So that's where my mentality is for something like this. This is Kama versus Undertaker in a casket match. And the casket match is one of the stupidest things I've ever seen in wrestling. Going back to the steel cage match, top of the, like, oh, if you escape the steel cage, you win. No, that's bullcrap in and of itself, but it's double bullcrap that the refs open the door for you when you get close. The whole point is it's supposed to be hard to leave. So, here's my first problem with the casket match, is they did not explain it before the match started. There was twice that The Undertaker knocked Kama into the casket and the match kept going. And I'm like, why is the match going? Taker got him in the casket. But, no, apparently they have to close the lid. Okay, going with this first example, Kama didn't just have to be in the casket. The Undertaker had to actually close the lid. Like, okay, but here goes my point about the refs opening the door. The refs also have to open the casket, I guess, when people get close, because it's closed half the time. So, I mean, that's just another level of difficulty. Then you have to worry about the other person being able to reach. So, I think that's just way too freaking complicated, okay? Second, there is a point during the match when they are both in there and the lid is closed, and they're like, oh, what do we do? They both lost, okay? It's a non-finisher or whatever. It's a count out. I don't care that that's considered lame to do in pay-per-views now, in which I normally agree with you, but by the freaking rules that you established, they both lost. Which led to another bit of the exaggeration, another bit I found was annoying about this match, is this was the cheapest casket I've ever seen, okay? Shell out some money, Vince. But the padding of the door of the casket came off during the part where they were both in there. And so when they both climb out, it's like, oh, I forget if it was Vince or King, but they, oh, that casket's been obliterated. It's like, no, it hasn't. It's still there. It's still functional. If it was obliterated, the match wouldn't work anymore. So yeah, my frustration there, but I am still going to say there were a couple really cool spots in there. Like one of the first things The Undertaker does is he lifts Kama up by the neck, and the way they shot it, it looks like he does it with one hand. Like I'm sure underneath, he's also grabbing Kama by the shirt or something, but we only saw Kama from the back, so that's what it looks like. And also, like as soon as the bell rang, like the referee that was in the ring during the first part, like to say, okay, here are the competitors, ring the bell. Like as soon as the ring bell, he like backed away from Taker. So I like how they used that to build the Undertaker. Like even the refs were afraid of him. And the other spot I liked is Kama got a pin on Taker, he's holding it for more than 3 seconds, and then it's like, oh right, I have to get him in the casket. That was kind of entertaining. That in itself, I just creatively, I think a casket match is stupid. But Undertaker won. Someone told me at some point the Undertaker always lost those, which I thought was weird, but no, he won this one. Oh, this is again just my own wrestling history. This is the first time I actually heard Paul Bearer talk, and I had heard people imitate his voice before, but to actually hear it was something else. So I mean, I kind of want to track down more Paul Bearer promos now. That was something. Okay, and this is another one where I think maybe applied to the band because this is part of the other. This is a wrestler who also has another job thing. This is Bret Hart versus Isaac Yankem, who is also a dentist who also happens to be a really good wrestler. It's like, I'd heard about this thing for a while, like IRS and the Repo Man, and I assumed this was all in the 80s. I had to remind myself this was SummerSlam 1995. It's like in the 90s they were doing this thing. This is why no one takes wrestling seriously, because people still have stuff like this in their brain, I'm sure. But even then, this match went from, like, okay, this match is fine, to, okay, there's some really good spots here. So, I mean, I get this. The only thing I can think of why this match is considered bad is because of the silliness of a wrestling dentist. So, there are a couple things, 3 things I want to point out about this one. One, this is like the only time I can think of where we saw a referee put his hands on a wrestler in a illegal way, because, normally, the referee gets punched, and, that's a problem. But, the dentist, Isaac Yankem, and I'm embarrassed to admit I didn't get the Yankem pun until I was writing it down for this list. But he had Bret in some kind of one of those things where you're only supposed to do it for like 5 seconds and you're supposed to let it go or you get disqualified. The ref did the 5 count twice. Yankem didn't stop. The ref started to do it again instead of disqualifying him, and then I don't know, screw it, and grabbed Yankem by the hair. And, he regretted it because Yankem immediately turned on him and got all intimidating. Vince said something like, you don't put your hands on an official. I don't remember seeing that. But after he said, you don't put your hands on an official again, he also said the officials don't put your hands on the superstars. So, I mean, props for it to do. The other thing I want to mention is this match ended in DQ. Because this is technically part of the Jerry the King Lawler versus Bret Hart feud. Bret, or the King, is getting the dentist to beat Brent up on the King's behalf. So there's 4 things. This is one of the things where, like, I'm not supposed to agree with the heel guys, because at one point Bret gets the dentist's legs between the posts and then ties them up with like a microphone or a camera cord. And, like, I know outside stuff gets used all the time and the ref doesn't do anything, but I don't know, that just like seemed a bit too much. And even the King's like, come on, you should be disqualifying him for that. I'm like, yeah, why aren't you? This isn't just getting hit in the face with something. This is like deliberately hindering your opponent. This is like hair pulling almost. Obvious example is obvious, I suppose, but so I thought that was weird. And then the match ends in a DQ. Bret somehow gets his head tangled up with the ropes, like in his neck. It looks like, again, props to wrestlers for doing themselves to themselves. So Jerry and the dentist just start beating him. So the ref calls the match, and they, of course, they're heels. They don't stop when the match is called. So the ref keeps singing for the bell. And I'm like, okay, 2, maybe 3 times, I get what you're going for, but at this point, there's no way they didn't hear it. So, and it got to the point where even when more referees, that cliche, even more referees showing up and trying to break up the fight, the bell kept ringing like a few more times after that. And I'm like, okay. And I can't remember this is the specific example. Okay, I'm going to mention a specific example, but I don't remember if this was the match. So I talked about Vince has a really great sports announcer voice. The thing I thought was interesting is when he got excited, not only did he get louder, but his voice dropped an octave or two. I think that's what it was like. So he'd be shouting, but he'd also like, okay, apparently my phone ran out of room because I was rambling too long. I did not expect to be talking about it this much. As I was saying, Vince's voice would drop a lower octave when he was getting excited. So there's this one moment at one point where he's like, "It's over! It's over!" It's not over. That's just that cracked me up. I don't even know where the list went. And I'm not going to spend more time looking for it. Oh, here it is. But yeah, so that match was fine. There was some really cool parts in it. Next is apparently what's considered the only good match is Razor Ramon versus Shawn Michaels, a ladder match for the Intercontinental title. And yeah, that was a really good match. Another showing my showing my wrestling age though is probably even before I got into wrestling, I knew their name Razor Ramon. And, ever since getting into it, I definitely know what he looks like. This is the first time I ever heard him talk. So I wasn't expecting, like, this almost Tony Danza sounding voice coming out of this guy. I know that's a terrible impression, but yeah, that was a really good match. Another thing about Razor Ramon is, like, when they were talking about the lead up to this match, just one point where they called him the bad guy. I was like, oh, they just flat out said one of them's a heel. That's cool. But then they said it a few more times, like, oh no, that's his nickname, like the Heartbreak Kid, which I guess kind of works. And he was definitely the bad guy in this. And there's like one really good moment where he's trying to set up the ladder. Razor Ramon is trying to set up the ladder, and Michaels is lying prone, and Ramon just stops and lets the ladder fall on Michaels. He doesn't like shove it or anything. It just sort of lets it fall, and then it closes up on his face, and he has this just perfect bad guy smirk. So yeah, like it's the little things, as AJ Styles likes to say. So I don't know. It just felt like it would have been too on the nose if he threw it, but the fact that he just sort of stopped and let it fall. Of course, this did lead to a little bit of confusion. Is at the end of the match when Michaels won, which again, good match. I could actually go on about this one a while, but I think the second file is already almost 20 minutes. So Michaels gets the belt. The bell's rung. Razor attacks Michaels, knocks him down, shakes the belt, looks down at it, then gives it back to Michaels and shakes his hand and does the point thing. And like, I know they're going with the whole show of respect thing, which is something I normally like, but how it started confused me. It's like, okay, if you're going to do that, why are you attacking him? So, I don't know. And yeah, the last match, the main event, is King Mabel. Apparently he won the King of the Ring thing. Again, I don't know if this is someone I've heard of before. Big Daddy Diesel, which is someone I've heard of before. And this match's biggest problem was it had to follow the ladder match. The ladder match definitely should have been in the event. Just match of the night, close second would be the Skip versus the loser. But and yeah, this match was kind of dull. I realized my big problem is I didn't know who was supposed to be heel and who was supposed to be the face, because the promos were all generic. Say, oh, I'm going to take your title. No, you're not. And they didn't say or do anything to make me like, okay, that's the good guy. And at first I was like, okay, maybe I'm figuring it out because one had an outside player interfere, but no, then someone else did it too. The only thing I can think of is Diesel was supposed to be the face because Lex Luger interfered on his behalf, and he was wearing the American, like an American flag button-down shirt, and I know they tried to make Lex Luger the next Hulk Hogan style face, but I don't know if he stayed a face the entire time. So yeah, that was my big problem. Part of my problem is I didn't know who I was rooting for, but other than that, it was just two big guys crashing into each other. I mean, I said all the other matches were fine. This one was like slightly below fine. This is where I found myself spacing out the most. So, but yeah, SummerSlam 1995, C plus. It was fine. I like the modern pay-per-views I've seen better, but I can't think. Well, I was going to say I can't think of anything really wrong, but I actually listed some things that were pretty wrong about it. I don't feel punished, but that's nothing new. And just like how SummerSlam 95 just sort of ended, I'm just going to end this. Bye.